The encounter. The marketplace buzzed with life, a chaotic blend of alien species from across the galaxy. Bright neon signs flickered in languages David couldn't read, and the air smelled of something sharp and metallic. He adjusted the strap of his old, bulging backpack, trying to appear as casual as possible. But he wasn't here to shop. His eyes darted between the crowded stalls, scanning for something or someone. Zinna stood a few stalls away, hidden among the crowd. Her violet skin glowed faintly under the marketplace lights, her silver eyes narrowing as she watched the human. Humans were rare here, especially ones carrying suspicious, oversized bags. She didn't trust them. In her world, humans were known to be unpredictable and dangerous. And this one. He looked like trouble. The human stopped near a fruit vendor, pretending to browse. Zinna leaned closer, her heart pounding. What was in that bag? It bulged unnaturally, as if something alive, or deadly, was inside. She thought of the recent rumors about illegal human weapons being smuggled into the city. Could he be one of those smugglers? David felt her gaze but didn't turn. He knew someone was watching him. He could feel it, the hairs on his neck standing up. His hand tightened on the strap of his bag. He had to keep moving. He couldn't afford to be stopped, especially not by local law enforcement or worse, someone looking for trouble. He stepped away from the fruit stall, blending into the flow of the crowd. Zinna followed him, keeping her distance. She was no law officer, but she had her own reasons for getting involved. Her people had suffered enough because of human weapons. If this human was here to bring destruction, she wouldn't let it happen. She reached for the small plasma blade hidden on her hip, just in case. David turned a corner into a quieter part of the marketplace, away from the main crowd. Zinna hesitated. This area was dimly lit, with flickering lights and broken stalls. It was the kind of place where people disappeared. Still, she followed, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The sound of her soft footsteps echoed in the narrow alley. "Why are you following me?" David's voice cut through the silence like a knife. He didn't turn around, but his grip on the bag tightened. Zinna froze, caught off guard. How had he noticed her? She thought she'd been careful. "What's in the bag?" she demanded, stepping forward, her hand on her plasma blade. Her voice was steady, but her heart raced. "I saw you sneaking around. What are you hiding?" David finally turned to face her, his face calm, but his eyes sharp. "It's none of your business," he said evenly. "I suggest you walk away." Zinna's fingers tightened on her weapon. "Not until you tell me what's in that bag." "Is it a weapon? Are you trying to smuggle it here?" David smirked, his expression unreadable. "You think I'd walk into a place like this carrying something dangerous? Do I look that stupid?" "You look like someone hiding something," Zinna shot back. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on the bag. "Open it. Now." David's smirk faded. "You don't want to do this," he said quietly. "Trust me." But Zinna didn't trust him. She lunged forward, grabbing for the bag. David dodged, but she was fast. She managed to grab the strap, pulling it toward her. The bag jerked open slightly, and for a brief moment, she saw something glowing inside. Her breath caught in her throat. What is that?" she whispered, her voice shaking. The glow was unnatural, a pulsing light that seemed alive. David yanked the bag away and took a step back. "I told you," he said, his voice cold now. "It's none of your business." Before Zinna could respond, a loud alarm blared through the marketplace. Red lights flashed overhead, and the crowd erupted in panic. Vendors shouted, and aliens scattered in every direction. Zinna's heart raced. What was happening? David took advantage of the chaos. He turned and sprinted down the alley, the bag clutched tightly to his chest. "Stop!" Zinna shouted, chasing after him. She dodged through the panicking crowd, her mind racing. That glow, it wasn't a weapon, but it wasn't harmless either. She needed to know what it was. David disappeared around a corner, and Zinna pushed herself to move faster. She didn't care about the alarm or the chaos around her. All she cared about was catching that human and uncovering his secret. When she turned the corner, she found herself in an empty alley. David stood at the far end, his back to the wall. He was trapped. "I told you to walk away," he said, his voice low. He slowly unzipped the bag, just enough for the glow to escape. The light illuminated the alley, casting strange shadows on the walls. Zina froze, her eyes wide. What is that?" she whispered again, her voice barely audible. David's expression was unreadable as he looked at her. "Something that could save us all, or destroy everything." The glow pulsed brighter, and Zina's heart sank. She had no idea what she had just gotten herself into. The chase begins. The air in the marketplace felt heavier now. The blaring alarm was deafening, and chaos reigned as vendors packed up their goods and fled. Some aliens tripped over one another, their panic turning the once bustling market into a frenzy. But in the middle of it all, Zina stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the faint glow spilling from David's bag. That's not a weapon," Zina whispered to herself, though her pulse raced with doubt. Whatever it was something far more dangerous than she had imagined. David took a slow step back, his eyes scanning her face, measuring her reaction. "You've already seen too much," he said, his tone a mix of frustration and caution. Then, without another word, he turned and bolted into the crowd. Zina snapped out of her shock. "Oh no, you don't," she growled under her breath, sprinting after him. The pounding of her boots on the cobblestone echoed loudly, blending with the distant alarm and the shouts of the panicked crowd. She shoved past tall, scaled creatures and ducked under low-hanging market stalls, her sharp gaze locked on the human weaving his way through the chaos. David ran with purpose, his body moving with the agility of someone who had been in tight spots before. The glowing artifact swung in his bag, dimmed now but still faintly visible. Every corner he turned, every shadow he slipped into, he expected to lose her. But Zina was relentless. "Stop running," Zina shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. "You're just making this worse for yourself." David didn't respond. His focus was on the exit gates of the marketplace, where the shadows of armed guards loomed. He cursed under his breath. This wasn't part of the plan. He needed to get out of here, fast. But there was no clear way out. The guards were too close, and the alien woman chasing him wasn't about to give up. As he dashed into a narrow alley, Zina followed, barely a step behind. The walls here were high and covered in strange, flickering symbols. The alley was quieter than the market, almost too quiet, but the tension was thicker than ever. "You're cornered," Zina called out, breathing heavily as she slowed her steps. Her hand hovered over the plasma blade at her waist. "Drop the bag, and maybe I won't have to hurt you." David stopped at the end of the alley, where a tall metal fence blocked his path. For a moment, he stood still, his back to her. Then, slowly, he turned around. His face was calm, but his sharp blue eyes sparkled with something else, defiance, or maybe amusement. "Hurt me?" David said, raising an eyebrow. "You're assuming you could catch me first." Zina narrowed her eyes. "You've got nowhere to run." David glanced up at the towering fence, and then back at her. "Who says I need to run?" Before Zina could respond, David reached into the bag and pulled out the glowing artifact. It pulsed brightly, casting eerie shadows across the alley walls. The air around it shimmered, almost as if it was alive. Zina instinctively stepped back, her heart pounding. What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice shaking despite her best efforts to sound brave. David smirked. "Letting you see what you've been chasing." The artifact let out a low hum, and the glow began to expand, filling the alley with light. Zina felt the ground beneath her feet vibrate slightly, and for a brief moment, she thought the world was about to collapse around her. "Turn that thing off," she shouted, her hand tightening on her weapon. "You're going to attract every guard in the city." "Too late for that," David said. He held the artifact up, and with a sudden burst of light, it emitted a strange, high-pitched tone that seemed to ripple through the air. The sound was otherworldly, like a song from a distant galaxy. Zina clutched her ears, wincing. In the distance, the alarm stopped abruptly, and the marketplace fell eerily silent. Even the guards, who had been approaching, paused in their tracks, staring in the direction of the alley. "What did you just do?" Zina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She stared at David, her eyes wide with fear and awe. David didn't answer. Instead, he slung the artifact back into his bag and looked at her with a serious expression. "You can either keep chasing me, or you can help me. But if you choose to chase me, you better be ready for what's coming next." Before Zina could process his words, David moved. With a surprising burst of speed, he scaled the metal fence with ease, disappearing over the top before she could react. Zina stood there, stunned. Her hand fell from her weapon as she stared at the empty alley. Her mind raced with questions. What was that artifact? Why did the alarm stop? And who, or what, was this human running from? She clenched her fists, determination flaring in her chest. This wasn't over. Whatever this human was up to, she was going to find out. With a deep breath, she turned and ran back toward the marketplace, her silver eyes scanning for any sign of him. The hunt was far from over. A hidden truth. The dark cityscape stretched endlessly beneath the twin moons, their pale glow illuminating the jagged skyline. Zina crouched on the rooftop of a crumbling building, her breathing steady as she scanned the streets below. The human had slipped through her fingers twice now, and she wasn't going to let it happen again. Somewhere in the twisting maze of alleys, he was hiding, with that glowing artifact she couldn't stop thinking about. Far below, David moved like a shadow, keeping to the dimly lit paths and avoiding the patrolling guards. The city was alive with whispers of the strange event in the marketplace. Some said a human had unleashed forbidden technology, while others claimed it was an ancient weapon waking from its slumber. David smirked to himself. He had always hated how rumors twisted the truth, but tonight, they might work in his favor. Zina's sharp eyes caught movement near an abandoned transport station. She narrowed her gaze, spotting the unmistakable shape of the human slipping through the broken gates. Without hesitation, she leaped to the next rooftop, her boots barely making a sound as she raced after him. David ducked into the station, his steps echoing in the hollow space. Rusted vehicles lay scattered, their metal husks coated in layers of dust. He found a quiet corner and set the bag down, pulling the artifact out. It hummed softly in his hands, its glow reflecting in his tired eyes. "I don't have much time," he muttered to himself, tapping the artifact's smooth surface. The glow flickered in response, almost as if it understood him. "Show me where to go next." The artifact pulsed, and a faint holographic map appeared in the air. David studied it quickly, committing the directions to memory. But just as he began to pack the artifact away, he heard the faintest sound, barely a whisper of movement. He froze. "I knew you'd come here." Zina's voice rang out, cold and sharp. David sighed and slowly turned around, raising his hands in mock surrender. "You're persistent, I'll give you that." Zina stepped out of the shadows, her plasma blade drawn and glowing faintly. Her silver eyes locked onto the artifact still in his hands. "Put it down. Now." David tilted his head, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "You're really stuck on this whole threat thing, aren't you? I told you, it's not a weapon." "Then what is it?" Zina snapped, taking a step closer. "Because whatever it is, it's dangerous. I saw what it did back there." David hesitated, his smirk fading. He looked down at the artifact, its glow casting eerie patterns on his face. "It's a key," he said finally. "A key to something old. Something powerful." Zina's grip on her blade tightened. "A key to what?" David glanced around, his voice lowering. "Do you really want to have this conversation here, in the open? Or do you want to keep chasing me until I lead you straight into someone else's trap?" Zinna hesitated, her mind racing. She didn't trust him, not even a little. But she also couldn't deny that the guards and mercenaries combing the city weren't after her. They were after him. And whatever this artifact was, it had to be bigger than anything she'd ever seen. "Talk," she said, keeping her blade pointed at him. "But no tricks." David sighed, leaning against a rusted transport. "Fine, but you're not going to like what I have to say." He held up the artifact, its glow intensifying. "This isn't just a key. It's a map, a guide to something buried deep beneath this planet. A technology left behind by a race that disappeared thousands of years ago. They called it the Catalyst." Zinna frowned, her eyes narrowing. "The Catalyst? That's just a myth." David shook his head. "It's real, and it's here. That's why I came to this city, to find it before the wrong people do." "The wrong people?" Zinna echoed. "You mean the ones chasing you?" David nodded. "They're not just after me. They're after this." He gestured to the artifact. "If they get their hands on it, they'll use it to unlock the catalyst. And if the stories are true, that thing isn't just a piece of old tech. It's alive, and it can destroy entire worlds." Zinna stared at him, her mind reeling. "And I'm supposed to believe you're the right person to handle it." David met her gaze, his expression serious. "I didn't say that. I'm just trying to keep it out of worse hands." Before Zinna could respond, a low rumble echoed through the station. The ground beneath them vibrated, and distant voices shouted orders. Both of them froze. "They're here," David said quietly, slipping the artifact back into his bag. "We need to move. Now." Zinna hesitated for only a second before stepping aside, motioning for him to lead the way. "This doesn't mean I trust you." David smirked faintly as he moved past her. "I wouldn't trust me either." Together, they slipped into the shadows, the glow of the artifact their only guide, as the walls of the station seemed to close in around them. The chase wasn't over. It had only just begun. Enemies closing in. The air in the underground tunnels was damp and heavy, filled with the faint scent of rust and decay. Zinna followed David in silence, her plasma blade still in her hand. The dim glow of the artifact, tucked inside his bag, cast shifting shadows on the walls. Every step echoed faintly, a reminder that they were not alone. David stopped abruptly, holding up a hand. Zinna froze, her sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. "What is it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Footsteps," David replied, his voice tense. He pointed toward a side passage. "They're coming this way." Zinna listened carefully and felt her stomach drop. He was right. The rhythmic sound of boots against metal was faint but growing louder. Whoever was after them was getting closer. "Who are they?" Zinna asked, gripping her blade tighter. David glanced at her, his expression grim. "Mercenaries, hired guns. They don't care what happens to us. They just want the artifact." Zinna's jaw tightened. She hated mercenaries. They had no loyalty to anything but credits. "Then we stop running and fight." David shook his head. "No, they're too many, and they're better equipped than we are. If we stay here, we're dead." Zinna hesitated. Running wasn't her style, but David had a point. Still, she didn't trust him. Not completely. "Fine," she said reluctantly. "But if this is some kind of trick, I'll gut you myself." David smirked faintly. Duly noted. He led her deeper into the tunnels, moving quickly but carefully. The sound of the mercenaries' boots grew fainter, but Zinna knew they weren't safe yet. The tunnels were a labyrinth, and it was only a matter of time before their hunters caught up. As they rounded a corner, Zinna caught sight of something that made her stop in her tracks. Strange symbols were etched into the walls, glowing faintly with a pale blue light. They pulsed gently, almost as if they were alive. "What is this?" she asked, running her fingers over the carvings. David glanced back at her. "It's part of the Catalyst's network," he said. "This entire planet is built on its remains. These symbols are like veins, carrying energy to whatever's buried below. Zena's silver eyes narrowed. You seem to know a lot about this. David hesitated, then sighed. Let's just say I've been chasing the catalyst for a long time. It's complicated. Before Zena could press him further, the walls trembled slightly, and a low rumble echoed through the tunnels. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the blue symbols flickered. That's not good, David muttered, his voice tight. Zena glanced around, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. What's happening? David didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled the artifact out of his bag. It pulsed rapidly, its glow growing brighter. The catalyst is waking up, he said finally. And it knows we're here. Zena's stomach twisted. It knows we're here. What does that even mean? David met her gaze, his expression serious. It's not just a machine. It's alive. And it's watching us. Before Zena could respond, a sharp whistling sound cut through the air. She barely had time to react before something exploded nearby, sending her and David sprawling to the ground. The tunnel filled with smoke and debris, and Zena coughed as she struggled to stand. They'd found us, David said, his voice grim. He pulled her to her feet, his grip firm but not rough. We have to move. Zena nodded, adrenaline pumping through her veins. The two of them sprinted down the tunnel, their footsteps echoing loudly. Behind them, the sound of mercenaries shouting grew louder. They reached a massive chamber, its walls covered in glowing blue symbols. In the center of the room stood a towering structure, part machine, part stone, and pulsing with an eerie light. Zena stared at it, her breath catching in her throat. That's part of the catalyst, David said, his voice filled with awe. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Zena snapped, dragging her gaze away from the structure. It looks like it's about to kill us. David didn't respond. He stepped toward the structure, the artifact in his hands glowing brightly. It pulsed in sync with the structure, as if they were communicating. David, what are you doing? Zena demanded. Her instincts screamed at her to pull him back, but something about the look on his face stopped her. I need to activate it, David said, his voice steady. If I don't, we're not going to make it out of here. Before Zena could argue, another explosion rocked the chamber. The mercenaries were closing in, their voices echoing through the tunnels. Do it fast, Zena said, her blade in hand as she turned to face the entrance. I'll hold them off. David glanced at her, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. Be careful. Zena smirked. I don't need your concern, human. Just don't get us killed. As David approached the structure, the artifact's glow intensified, and the room filled with a deep, resonant hum. Zena positioned herself near the entrance, her blade glowing brightly as the first of the mercenaries appeared. Come on, she muttered, her silver eyes blazing with determination. Let's see what you've got. Behind her, the catalyst began to awaken, its light casting strange, shifting shadows across the chamber. Whatever was about to happen, Zena knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same again. A dangerous alliance. The catalyst chamber pulsed with energy, the blue glow from its ancient symbols growing brighter with every passing second. The air felt electric, vibrating with a low hum that sent chills down Zena's spine. She stood at the entrance, plasma blade in hand, her sharp silver eyes focused on the shadows moving in the tunnel ahead. David stood behind her, his hands trembling slightly as he pressed the artifact against the structure. The two pulsed in unison, and faint holographic patterns began to spread across the walls like veins of light. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. The artifact was responding, but so was the catalyst. And deep down, David wasn't sure if he could control what came next. We don't have time for this, Zena snapped, glancing over her shoulder. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. They're here. David didn't respond. His focus was locked on the holograms dancing in front of him. Symbols and patterns flickered in and out of existence, too fast for Zena to make sense of them. But David's lips moved silently, as if he understood. Zina didn't have time to ask. The first mercenary appeared at the edge of the chamber, his armor glinting faintly in the light. He wasn't alone. 3 more followed, each armed with weapons that looked far more advanced than anything Zina had seen in years. "Stop right there," the lead mercenary barked, his voice amplified by a translator. His rifle was aimed directly at Zina. "Step away from the catalyst, and we might let you live." Zina smirked, raising her plasma blade. "That's a funny offer," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Too bad I don't negotiate with amateurs." Before the mercenary could react, Zina lunged forward, her blade slicing through the air. The first shot rang out, but Zina moved too quickly. She was on him in seconds, her blade cutting cleanly through his weapon and forcing him back. The other mercenaries opened fire, their energy bolts lighting up the chamber. Zina twisted and dodged with inhuman speed, her movements fluid and precise. Each step brought her closer to the remaining mercenaries, who struggled to keep up with her agility. "Zina," David's voice cut through the chaos. "I need more time." "Then buy it yourself," Zina shouted back, narrowly avoiding a shot that scorched the ground near her feet. She ducked behind a crumbling pillar, catching her breath. "I'm a fighter, not a miracle worker." David gritted his teeth, his hands flying over the holographic interface. The catalyst's symbols were growing brighter, shifting faster, and the artifact's glow was nearly blinding. He could feel the connection between the two deepening, like a locked door slowly creaking open. Suddenly, a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. It wasn't a voice anyone recognized. It was ancient, layered, and in a language that neither David nor Zina understood. But the meaning was clear. "Who dares awaken me?" David's blood ran cold. He glanced at the artifact, its pulsing light now almost frantic. Zina, I think I just triggered something." Zina ducked out from behind the pillar, her blade slicing through another mercenary's weapon. "Yeah, I noticed," she shouted, kicking one of the soldiers to the ground. "If you've got any bright ideas, now's the time to share them." The voice boomed again, louder this time. The walls of the chamber trembled, and the blue light from the catalyst began to spread across the floor. The mercenaries froze, their weapons lowered as they looked around in confusion and fear. "What's happening?" one of them shouted, his voice cracking. Zina didn't wait to find out. She took advantage of their distraction, charging forward and disarming the remaining mercenaries in a blur of movement. They fell back, retreating toward the tunnel. "Fall back! Fall back!" the lead mercenary yelled, his voice panicked. But their retreat came too late. The floor beneath them cracked, and tendrils of light shot up from the ground, wrapping around their legs and pulling them down. The mercenaries screamed, their voices fading as they were consumed by the glowing tendrils. Zina stared, her chest heaving, as she tried to process what she was seeing. "David, what the hell is this?" David didn't answer. He was too focused on the catalyst, which was now fully awake. The holographic symbols had formed a massive, intricate pattern in the air, and the artifact was vibrating in his hands. The voice spoke again, this time directly into his mind. "You seek the power of the catalyst, but are you worthy to wield it?" David swallowed hard. I was kind of hoping you wouldn't ask that question." The hologram shifted, forming a new image, one that looked like a doorway, pulsing with light. Zina stepped closer, her plasma blade still drawn. "What is that?" she asked, her voice quieter now. David hesitated. "It's an entrance," he said finally, "to the core of the catalyst. But I don't think it's going to let us in without a fight." Zina glanced at the doorway, then at David. "You're saying that thing decides who gets to enter?" David nodded. "It's a test. If we fail, we don't leave here alive." Zina sighed, the weight of the moment settling over her. Great, because this day wasn't stressful enough already. David smirked despite himself. "Still want to gut me?" "Ask me again when this is over," Zina muttered, stepping toward the doorway. "Let's get this over with." The two of them stood side by side, the glowing doorway looming before them. As they stepped closer, the chamber trembled once more, and the voice of the catalyst whispered in their minds, "Prove your worth, or perish." The artifact's true purpose. The glow of the doorway bathed the chamber in an otherworldly light, shifting between shades of deep blue and shimmering white. Zinna and David stood at its threshold, their faces set in grim determination. The whispering voice of the catalyst echoed in their minds, ancient and commanding. "Prove your worth, or be forgotten." Zinna tightened her grip on her plasma blade, her silver eyes darting to David. "You didn't mention anything about a test," she said sharply. David glanced at her, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. "I didn't know," he admitted, the artifact in his hand pulsing softly. "But if we're going to survive this, we have to work together." Zinna scoffed. "Great plan, human. Very inspiring." She took a deep breath and stepped through the doorway, the air around her shimmering like heat waves. "Let's get this over with." David followed, the artifact vibrating more intensely as they crossed into the catalyst's core. The chamber beyond was vast, its walls lined with shifting symbols and ancient machinery. Strange orbs of light floated in the air, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. The hum of energy was deafening, resonating in their bones. "This is incredible," David whispered, his eyes wide as he took in the sight. The artifact in his hand seemed to respond to the chamber, glowing brighter and emitting a series of soft, melodic tones. "Incredible," Zinna said, her tone laced with sarcasm. "It feels more like a trap to me." Before David could reply, the voice of the catalyst returned, louder and more distinct. "The power you seek is not given, it is earned. Face the trial of unity. Only those who stand as one may proceed." Zinna frowned, her instincts flaring. "Trial of unity? What does that mean?" David shook his head. "I have no idea, but I don't think we're going to like it." As if in response to his words, the floor beneath them shifted, forming a series of intricate patterns that glowed with an intense light. The air grew heavier, and Zinna felt a strange pressure in her chest, as though something was probing her thoughts. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the light, a towering humanoid shape made entirely of shifting energy. Its eyes glowed like twin stars, and its voice boomed, filling the chamber. "You must confront your truth." David and Zinna exchanged a tense glance. "What does that mean?" Zinna asked, her voice low. The figure didn't answer. Instead, the light around them pulsed, and two smaller figures began to materialize in front of them. Zinna's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the shape of the figure nearest to her, a member of her family, long gone but etched deeply in her memory. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This isn't real." David, too, froze as the second figure took form, a shadow from his past, a face he had spent years trying to forget. His hands clenched into fists, his breathing uneven. "What are you doing?" he demanded, glaring at the glowing figure. "This isn't part of the deal. Your unity will be tested." The voice of the catalyst boomed. "Separate, you are weak. Together, you may find strength. Confront your past, or fall to your fear." Zinna's plasma blade shook in her hand as the figure before her stepped closer, its glowing eyes piercing into hers. "You failed us," it said, its voice a perfect echo of someone she once loved. "You left when we needed you most." "No," Zinna muttered, shaking her head. "That's not true. I had no choice." David's voice cut through her rising panic. "Zinna, focus. They're not real." Zinna snapped her gaze to him, her breathing ragged. "Easy for you to say," she shot back, her voice trembling. "What about your shadow?" David glanced at the figure advancing toward him, his jaw tightening. "I've been running from this for years," he said quietly. "But not anymore." He gripped the artifact tightly and stepped forward, his voice steady. "You're not real," he said to the figure. "You're a memory, and you don't control me." The figure paused, its glowing eyes dimming slightly. The chamber seemed to tremble, the energy in the air growing more volatile. Zinna swallowed hard, her hands shaking. She turned back to her figure, her heart pounding. "You're not real," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't get to judge me." The figure hesitated, its form flickering. Zinna's confidence grew. "I did what I had to do," she said firmly. "I've made my choices, and I'll live with them. You're just a shadow." As the words left her mouth, the figure shattered into 1,000 points of light, vanishing into the air. Zinna let out a shaky breath, her knees threatening to buckle. David's figure dissolved moments later, and the glowing humanoid shape reappeared before them. "You have passed the trial of unity," it said, its voice echoing with a sense of finality. "But the true test lies ahead. Proceed and face your destiny." The doorway behind them sealed shut, and a new path opened in front of them, its glowing symbols beckoning them forward. Zinna sheathed her blade, her silver eyes locking onto David's. "If that was the warm-up," she said, her voice dry, "I'm not sure I want to know what's next." David smirked faintly, his grip on the artifact firm. "Whatever it is, we don't have a choice." Together, they stepped forward, the path ahead pulsing with light as the catalyst's power grew stronger. Behind them, the chamber fell silent, the echoes of their trial fading into the void. A priceless shock. The new corridor was unlike anything Zinna and David had seen before. The walls shimmered as if made of liquid light, rippling with every step they took. The air was thick with energy, each breath charged with the weight of untold power. The artifact in David's hand pulsed in rhythm with the glowing symbols around them, its light growing more intense with every step. They were nearing the catalyst's core. "This place feels alive," Zinna muttered, her voice hushed as she scanned their surroundings. Her silver eyes caught faint movements in the walls, like shadows swooning beneath the surface. "Are we walking into its mind?" David, his focus locked on the path ahead, shook his head. "If it has a mind, I'd rather not find out what it's thinking," he replied. "Let's just hope it doesn't decide to kill us." The corridor ended abruptly, opening into a massive circular chamber. The core of the catalyst stood at its center, a colossal, crystalline structure suspended in midair, radiating blinding light. The energy pouring from it was overwhelming, the hum so loud it drowned out their thoughts. Zinna instinctively took a step back, shielding her eyes. "This is it," David whispered, his voice filled with awe. The core. The artifact in his hand began to vibrate violently, as if it were trying to leap toward the core. David struggled to hold on to it, his knuckles white. "It's reacting," he said through gritted teeth. "This is what it's been leading us to." Zinna's instincts flared. "And what happens when it gets there?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You still haven't told me what this thing really does." David hesitated, his eyes flicking to her. "I don't know everything," he admitted. "But I do know this. The catalyst holds unimaginable power. It's capable of reshaping entire worlds, or destroying them. That's why I've been trying to keep it out of the wrong hands." Zinna glared at him. "And what makes you think you're the right hands?" Before David could answer, the chamber began to change. The light from the core shifted, forming a towering figure of pure energy in the center of the room. It had no face, but its presence was commanding, its voice resonating in their minds like a chorus of countless voices. "You have come seeking the catalyst's power, but power demands a price." Zinna tensed, her plasma blade already in her hand. "What kind of price?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the weight of the presence before them. "A choice," the voice replied. "One must wield the power, and one must be sacrificed to it. There is no other way." David's breath caught in his throat. "Sacrifice? What are you talking about?" The figure turned its gaze, or what passed for a gaze, toward him. "The catalyst cannot be activated without balance. To awaken its true potential, one must give their essence, their life, to sustain it. The other will inherit its power." The chamber fell silent, the weight of the decision crushing. Zinna and David exchanged a look, the gravity of the moment reflected in their eyes. "No," Zinna said firmly, her voice cutting through the stillness. "There has to be another way." "There is no other way," the voice repeated, unyielding. "Decide, or the catalyst will decide for you." David's hand tightened on the artifact, his mind racing. He had come so far, risked everything to protect this power from falling into the wrong hands. But this, he hadn't planned for this. His gaze shifted to Zinna, who stood defiant, her silver eyes blazing. "I'll do it," David said suddenly, his voice quiet but resolute. Zinna's head snapped toward him. "What?" she demanded. "No, don't be stupid." David managed a faint smile. "You were right not to trust me," he said. "I've made mistakes, hurt people, but this is my chance to make it right." Zinna stepped forward, grabbing his arm. "You think dying will fix everything. That's not how this works." David met her gaze, his expression softening. "It's not about fixing anything. It's about making sure this power doesn't fall into the wrong hands." Before Zinna could respond, the figure of light spoke again. "The choice has been made." The chamber erupted in light, blinding and all-encompassing. Zinna shielded her eyes, her heart pounding. When the light dimmed, she found herself alone. "David," she called out, her voice echoing in the now silent chamber. There was no answer. Her eyes fell on the core, which had transformed. It no longer glowed with raw energy. Instead, it pulsed gently, its light calming. The artifact lay on the ground, lifeless. "David!" Zinna shouted again, panic rising in her chest. She ran to the core, her hands trembling as she searched for any sign of him. Then a voice, David's voice, spoke, but it didn't come from any physical form. It resonated through the chamber, calm and steady. "I'm still here, Zinna." She froze, her heart sinking. What do you mean?" "I'm part of it now," David's voice said. "The catalyst needed a life to sustain it, and I'm the life it chose." Zinna's fists clenched, her silver eyes burning with emotion. "You idiot," she muttered, her voice breaking. "You didn't have to do this." "I did," David replied gently. "And now, it's up to you. The catalyst chose me to sustain it, but it chose you to wield its power." Zinna stared at the core, her mind reeling. The weight of what David had done, and what she now had to do, settled on her shoulders. She took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "I won't waste it," she said quietly. "I promise." The chamber pulsed with light, the catalyst's energy flowing into her. Zinna felt its power surge through her veins, overwhelming and exhilarating. She was no longer just Zinna. She was something far more. As the chamber fell silent once more, Zinna turned and walked toward the exit, the weight of her new purpose pressing on her shoulders. She didn't look back.